Flack Talk with James Canning, the podcast with the inside scoop on journalists from San Diego and across the nation. If you're a communications pro, have a nose for news, or you're just nosy, this is the podcast for you. Now here's your host, James Canning.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Flack Talk. It's your host, James Canning. Glad to be here today. I'm really excited for our guest today. It's someone that I've known for damn near, it's been about 20 years, I think. We've kind of come in and out of each other's life professionally. I've known her. She's been a great advice giver. She's, kind of encouragement person. And she's had a very interesting career trajectory when you really look at it. This is another one of my folks from Detroit, columnist for the Detroit News and co-host of the No Bullshit News podcast. Karen Dumas, thanks for coming on Flack Talk.
Well, thank you, James. I appreciate the invitation. I am honored, actually, so thank you.
Well, no, see, when I'm in Karen's presence, I'm the honored one, so the fact that she said that, I don't know.
It's mutual.
Thank you. So, Karen, how I began to know Karen goes all the way back, again, to my time in Detroit when I was working for the mayor. I was a new guy, wet behind the ears, as my friend Yvonne Jenkins would say. Just started there in the mayor's office. And Karen was our community engagement person. So she was out there in the community doing things. Well, I'll let her explain what those kind of roles were. But then Karen left the office, went off. And if I remember this story right, Karen, you went to... was it CHB, and you were essentially like the rival to the lady that really hated the mayor at the time, Mildred Gaddis.
And you have a good memory, James.
Yeah, and then Karen had always done articles and writing for various newspapers and stuff in town. But I remember that was like a big moment. It was like that Karen made that jump and then went, and then everyone was like, "Oh, this community engagement lady. Now she's on TV, radio. It was, I don't know, in Detroit, it was a big deal.
But if you remember, James, I actually started at CHB. Well, I'd gone to CHB initially in 92.
Yeah.
And then I went back after the purchase from Radio 1. And I was actually working for the mayor at the time because people had a big deal. Like, how is she working for the city and she's able to spend 3 or 4, however long the shift was on the air every day. And so, my whole thing was like, okay, so you don't have a problem with knowing where I am for these 4 hours. And I was using the platform to help educate and inform residents and people in the region. I said, but if I'm sitting in an office doing nothing all day, then you're okay with that. So yeah, it created a big issue.
I kind of forgot about that part of that it was actually an issue. I remember it was a big deal that you made the jump, but I couldn't remember exactly why. I thought it was just who you are. It was a big deal.
I think people just in general, and I think you see this now more than ever before, people just like being critical. They don't even give anything any thought. Certainly that was a platform that we were able to help inform, residents and people in the region about what was going on. And, and I always found that people in the area were severely misinformed or uninformed. And, it was a platform that we could base on information and not emotion, which everybody seemed to thrive on. But, at the time I was on the radio working for the mayor, writing for the Chronicle, and I had my private clients on hold because I didn't want it to be a conflict of interest. So I was pretty busy at the time, even when I left.
Well, and I think that's one of the very interesting things about you and your career, right? You have done a really great job of being able to kind of move between the communications world, the political world, and journalism, and I think and then when you look back, if folks go look up Karen, and I did my homework, I hope I didn't get this wrong, but you got a degree in science and merchandising, but you today are one of the most recognizable names and voices in media and communications in Detroit. Can you tell us, talk to folks about how you went from the science of merchandising to where you are today? Give us a little overview of that.
Sure. Well, the thing about it is that I initially wanted to go into medicine. I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to go into forensic pathology. But my whole life has always centered on communications. I talked too much in school. I learned the value of the ability to effectively communicate and write. I used to write and sell love letters for people in high school.
Oh, wait. You write? You got to tell us a little bit more about that one. I'm going to interrupt right there. Write and sell love letters. What was it? Like, were you the Hallmark before there was Hallmark, or what?
I sure was, James. That I did term papers, for some of the athletes at Michigan State. I mean, because people have a difficult time trying to compose and express their feelings. They do. And I have always had an uncanny ability to understand and communicate emotion. I've always had the ability to put myself in someone else's shoes and been able to translate that into, a form of communication, whether it's writing or speaking. So I did.
So after you stopped writing the love letters for the athletes who were trying to get the cheerleader, where did you go from there when you were in college?
Well, after I graduated, I ended up working for Mark's Lane. I actually went to a luncheon sponsored by Benetton. A friend had invited me there, and I met Mike Lane. Yeah. And, we started talking, and I told him that, at the time I wanted to go into PR. That was before it was cool and sexy and fun. And he said, sure. He said, come in. And, so I did. We talked. I think he had me write some stuff, in part of the interview, and I started and I worked there for not long, and then I got an appointment as the public information officer and press secretary for the mayor in the city of Highland Park. I was 24 at the time, and I was learning. Yeah. That went pretty well for a while, and then I was unappointed, as we casually call it.
For folks that don't know, unappointed means like you're at will. You serve at the pleasure of the mayor. Yeah, right. And that's what happens. We've all been there. And
if they walk in one day and say, "I don't want you here anymore," then you have a right to leave. But I was young at the time, and I'm thinking like, what is happening? So I started interviewing for other jobs. James, I was 24, making like $45,000 a year. I'm thinking, okay, real life isn't that bad. Yeah. But after I left, I started interviewing for other jobs, and other agencies were saying, well, we'll pay you. They were offering me less than I was making. So we'll pay you 30, but you've got to bring in 30, in clients. And after I heard that 2 or 3 times, I said, well, if they think I can bring in clients for them, let me bring in clients for myself. So I had an idea for a business in college, and I put my shingle out and started my own company. And that was it. The only other time that I've not, had my company operating was when I put it on pause twice. Once when I worked for Mayor Kilpatrick up until 2005, and then when I was pulled back into politics as chief of communications for Mayor Dave Bing.
Wow. So in your 20s, you began your business in comms, and then that really launched your trajectory. I mean, that's amazing. Like, I think it's funny, the Mark's Lane connection there. I mean, I think everyone who's ever been in Detroit and ever done any, journalism or communications, job has somehow crossed paths with Mark's Lane. I did an internship there very briefly.
Did you really? I didn't know that.
I did. I did a real brief, and then I got a call, the opportunity to go work for Bob Berg and Georgella Muirhead, and I was in my last semester.
Two other legends in the city.
They are, and but that Mark's Lane, they're still kicking, man. Mike Lane is he's all over my social. He's traveling the world now. Good for him.
Yeah, he is, with his son and his new grandkids. Yeah. But it was interesting because, Mike and I over the years have become, good friends. But I told him, I said, I used to think Mike, he was so intense back then. It was crazy. I mean, I can sit up and share stories with him now. And I used to just sit back and shake my head thinking like, oh my God, is this what this is like? But, I learned a lot. I'm always grateful for the opportunity that they extended.
So let me ask you this, because you talked about that. Like you obviously put your business on pause a couple times, went into the comm side for electeds, and then you've had these roles in journalism. What is it about your personality, do you think, that's allowed you to kind of navigate that, like go between both? Like, what is, because some people, like, you hear these stories, like, you're a longtime journalist, and then you go into comms, and that's kind of where you end up. Or you rarely hear the back and forth.
Well, I think honestly, is that I've never believed in a job that I took, but I took jobs that I believed in, and that applied, both to the political sector as well as my private clients. I think that I have earned a reputation for being honest. I don't BS people. I don't do things for money. I don't take advantage of people. I've just tried to be a good person, both personally and professionally. And because I've been around a long time, people have said, after a while, that's how you build a reputation, by being consistent in who you are and what you do. Again, I think that there's great value in having strong communication skills. And I try to tell kids that all the time. If you can read, write, and speak well, you'll be able to do anything. And without those skills, your abilities will be limited. I remember a young lady that was applying for grad school in engineering at the University of Michigan, and she had all the grades, but she couldn't pass the written portion of the test. I remember early on in my career being hired by a local anchor to write a speech that she was delivering to a third grade class, and I'm thinking, like, can't talk to third. I mean, people really trivialize the ability to communicate, and so. That's always served me well. I've always been opinionated. I've always been about what is good, right, and fair for the collective good. I'm not selfish in the things that I say or support. And I think that has, been beneficial to me over the years. No,
that's wonderful. I mean, I think that's good advice for anybody that's listening out there. Karen has shared her wisdom. You better soak it in right now, folks. Soak it in. So, let's talk a little bit about, because you have had columns at the Michigan Chronicle. You now have a column at the Detroit News. Can you talk with our listeners about, especially the folks that aren't from Michigan that are listening, about maybe the differentiation between these two papers? One's a weekly, one's a daily. What's the difference in those experiences? And maybe like a little bit of like, where were you in your career, in your mind, when you were writing for one versus the other?
Well, back at the Chronicle, and that was years ago, Karen Love was the assistant publisher.
Yep. Loves Karen Love.
And
Love Karen Love.
I know, and she's also been very supportive, not only of me and my career. She and the late Sam Logan, they were also instrumental in a lot of careers here in Detroit. But I don't even remember how I came to start writing for the Chronicle, but I remember they did an offshoot paper called The Front Page. And so I wrote for the Chronicle and I wrote for the Front Page. And I was really, able to tap into the community aspect a lot, just some personal observations. I always like to think that I see things differently. People look at the obvious, but they never look at the other stuff. And, hey, there's another way to look at this. And I was able to share those kinds of things. I actually took many of my columns and compiled them and put them in a book. Because a lot of people are like, oh, I didn't know you wrote for the Chronicle. So yeah, it's a Black published paper. It has now emerged more. To me, it has a little less community feel, more of a business feel to it. And then now for the News, the offer was extended to both me and Charlie LeDuff to start writing columns for the Detroit News. Nolan Finley was thoughtful and generous in that opportunity. I do mine on Tuesday and Charlie's appears on Wednesday. It's interesting though, because the audience is they're different. They're uber conservative, and again, everything is it's either black and white or Democrat and Republican, right, just straight down the line. And so again, some of the feedback, quite interesting. But again, people all want the same things. They just have different ideas about how to achieve them.
Karen, I want to get into the Detroit News stuff a little bit in a second, but I want to ask, the Chronicle, the book, what's the name of the book again, and where can folks get it?
In other words.
In other words.
Yeah, I'll have to send you one, James. I still have a few left in my stash. I'll send you one. It's just a compilation of what I thought were some of my better columns.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So we'll make sure we'll put a link in how folks can see that or learn about that in the description of the pod.
That book is old, James.
So what? So what?
If anybody wants one, I'll send it to them.
All right, we'll work
where
that.
It is.
We'll work that out. We'll work that out.
Good deal.
So, you kind of talked about your no nonsense approach, and I really appreciate you talking about that for folks. But what do you think? Let me just ask you this question: why do you think people respect that so much about you?
Well, I'll tell you this. I don't gossip. I don't violate the trust of anyone. I mean, people would be amazed at the conversations that I have and the calls that I receive and where I receive them from, because if people trust me, I don't violate their trust. And I think that there's great value in that, because people are always anxious to tell somebody else what they know and who they know and what they heard, because they think that somehow validates them. But I think that confidence, trust, honesty go a long way. And I just don't like BS. It's just unnecessary. It's not productive. It's not profitable, and it's just a waste of time. And as an entrepreneur, I equate time with money and productivity. And so I'm a time person, James.
Yeah,
I just don't waste time. Yeah. And that's one of them. That is a huge waste of time. I don't like to have mindless chit chat or conversations about things that it's just not who I am.
Yeah. No, those are some good lessons. That's some good, and people come to respect who you are if you know who you are. And I think that's something that you've always presented very well to folks, is this is who I am, and either you're going to like it or you not like it. And most people like it.
Well, even if they don't like it, they respect it. And so I have to, I understand, I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and, and that's okay. But I'm not going to pretend to be anything or anybody that I'm not. I'm not going to BS you. I'm not going to gas you up. If you want to know my honest opinion, I will give it to you. If you want somebody to tell you what you want to hear, then I'm not the person. I'm not beneficial to you in a professional or a personal capacity by telling you something that's untrue that may make you feel good, but that's not necessarily in your best interest. That's
such wisdom, in the sense that, in this everyone gets a trophy kind of culture that's being created, especially for young journalists, young PR people. It's so true. You need someone to tell you what you're not doing right or what you could be doing better. And it's not to be critical, it's to make you better.
But people don't do that, though, James. I know. The thing about it is that people are elevated for being yes people. I mean, I've been invited to a lot of meetings over the years and not necessarily invited back, because people they want to surround themselves with people who applaud, and support what they say and what they think. I consider myself an independent thinker. I don't dislike or disrespect someone that I may disagree with. That can be done respectfully. I mean, I'm also not one to think that we all have to think alike, look alike, live alike, or any of that. And I can respect those differences. Not everybody feels that way. So, most people want everybody in the room to speak in unison, and that doesn't necessarily go over for me.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's one of the, when you really look at your columns, right, with the Detroit News, I'm going to read you a couple headlines here, folks. Substandard services become the norm. Detroiters are being sold a bill of goods. Cashless businesses aren't inclusive for all Detroiters. Like, those are some of the headlines. And then when you read into the columns, obviously there's a lot of depth into them, a lot of thought. But I want to know, you are really good at being able to be honest and upfront and critical in your writing, but these people continuously respect you, and they continuously some of those people that you're criticizing call you to help them out, and then you give it to them real. Like, I think that's an amazing power to be able to have, that you wield. I don't know. I've always been in awe of that.
Well, I don't, I have never been, nor do I respect anyone that tries to make a career or any type of achievement at the expense of someone else. I would never do that. I'm not trying to, so I'm not into the whole blindsiding thing or just being nasty for the sake of, because we elevate people that, say stupid stuff, or if they, want to drag somebody. That's not necessary, and that's also not who I am. So I tend to look at it as objectively as possible. I can like you and disagree with you. I can dislike you and agree with you. So, that's I guess an unusual stance, but I'm looking again at how things are and, what has a collective impact on our community, not just me. Like, what does this mean for people that, don't necessarily share the same circumstances or perspective or experiences that I do?
Do you think enough journalism does that today?
I'm sorry?
Do you think enough journalism does that with the idea of looking at the community, what's for the collective good in terms of the way things are being reported?
Journalism reporting has changed so much. I think there are some people that try, but I also think that the audience has changed and declined. Social media is now the new news feed, and everybody is an expert. So, because there are a couple people that I follow and read, and I think they do a pretty good job. It's just like who's listening and who is responding to the information that they're putting out. That's the challenge.
Yeah. No, that's good. So when we talk about channels and way people are getting information, I mean, one of your other activities among the many are that you work with Charlie LeDuff. You mentioned this. You guys have kind of dueling columns, if you will, for the Detroit News, but then you also have the No Bullshit News podcast. Can you tell us more about that? Your role? What is that all about? Like, if folks, you go online, you look at it, it looks like they're in an old abandoned building. Like folks that Charlie's eclectic. Like a Pulitzer. Yeah, very eclectic. He's a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. He's a bit eclectic. I had the honor of being in his book, Detroit. Mm-hmm. It was great. But he's a creative one, and you guys make a good pairing there.
Well, interestingly, Charlie and I connected when he first came to Detroit, I think from New York or the New York Times. I think it was 2008.
It was.
And I was working for former Mayor Dave Bing at the time. And Charlie and I, like so often, when you're in a government capacity, you may clash with reporters, but we learned and earned a mutual respect for each other. Charlie does his homework like he does. He's not going to ask you a question that he has not researched. He's going to be fair. He's going to be honest. And we developed, a mutual respect for each other at that time. And he asked me to join his podcast. What is it, about 2 years now?
Yeah.
And at first I was like, okay, so how do I fit into all this? Because Charlie is different, but he allows me to be myself and he's himself. And we both have a desire to bring forth factual information that is otherwise pretty obscured, especially these days, and that is having an impact around here. And I enjoy it. I learn a lot from Charlie. If there's one word that I could use to describe it, it's fearless.
Yeah.
Charlie is fearless.
Yeah, he is. Well, and
he's feared. That's the other thing.
Well,
You've got people that will not come on the show. They won't talk to him because, Charlie's not going to submit questions ahead of time. He's not going to, play, okay, you can't ask me any questions about this. And it speaks volumes, not only the people that will come on the show, but also those who won't come on the show. That says a lot too.
Yeah.
Especially public officials.
Yeah. No, Charlie's famous in Detroit for, his I'm definitely gonna put the No Bullshit podcast link in there, but I might drop a Charlie LeDuff link in there for some of his old Fox stuff. I mean, it's hilarious. People have to know who
Charlie is. Charlie's a good guy and he has a good heart. He really does.
And the reality is the way the show. Like I think Charlie was out one week and you were hosting the show. I think you had the head of the GOP Michigan on.
Yeah, Christina Caramo.
Yeah, I mean, like the show is really. It's like it's news, and then there's a little bit of comedy in it, and there's a little bit of it's a different level of interest. It's not just, I don't know, like I find it like you can pull in on it. Like it's there's like this entertainment versus news. It's kind of a good mix of all those things.
Well, you remember Charlie's done television, he's done print, he's worked in California, he's worked for the New York Times, Fox 2 News here in Detroit. And so he's got a good team. He's got comedian Detroit Red, he's got Mark Fullhauer, Byron Goggin, who is an award-winning videographer. So he's got a great team. And he just kind of incorporates all those different pieces into the show. And so, I'm a little more conservative. Some of their humor is kind of, pushing the envelope for me, but I let them do them and they let me do me. And it just kind of all falls into place.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you said you. You named all those people, and I was about to say, and Karen Dumas. And Karen Dumas.
Yeah, because some of that stuff, I'm like, Charlie, what are we talking about? But, but it works because it also shows that people can still share a common space, yes, even if they aren't the same. And that's what we try to let everybody know. You can be different. We can think differently, and we can still all get along.
No, that's awesome. So, Karen, I got a couple more questions before we hit our breaking news round.
Okay.
So let me ask you this. Have you ever had any what the fuck moments in your career? Like things that were just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm dealing with this, or geez. Yes. Would you mind sharing a couple? Now, you don't have to name any names if you don't want. You don't have to do any of that.
No,
or if you want to, you can. Sure.
Hey, it's all public information. I think the biggest WTF moment was when we had a staff member sue me, the mayor in the city of Detroit, because she said that I created a hostile work environment. When in actuality, you would know this, I expected her to work and to perform. And so, as a result, I resigned and left a position that I loved. I was enjoying it. I thought I was doing a great job because it was just too much of a distraction. I mean, people, the media had a field day and she said, well, she must be having an affair with the mayor. I mean, just all kinds of foolishness. And I'm thinking like, what the fuck is this? So that's exactly. Other than that, I have those WTF moments kind of daily, but nothing as major as that.
Yeah, no, that was a big one. You handled yourself well. I went back. I was watching, as I was brushing up on my Karen Dumas information, I was watching the interview that you did after you left the mayor's office. I mean, if you notice, folks, like Karen didn't even, like I used what the fuck. Karen was very poised. She's like, the WTF moments, I've had them. and like in that interview, you were so poised. And it's always been the thing that I've admired about you. Lots of things, but that was one of the things. Like you're just so calm, so poised. And then, I don't know.
Well, I appreciate that, James, and I've always had a high level of respect and admiration for you personally and professionally as well. Thank that.
You. Yeah.
But, when you accept a high profile position like that one was, and there was a lot going on, I mean, you don't really have time. It's not about the emotion. And you also, as we said early on, you serve at the pleasure of the mayor, and you really have to be committed to what's in the best interest of both the mayor that you serve and the city that you serve. It wasn't in either of their best interest for me to continue to hang on and allow myself and the city and the mayor to be dragged through this foolishness in the media every day. I mean, I was on the front page of the paper every day for almost 2 weeks. It's like, what is this? There was a reporter that did a story and had 6 unnamed sources. He had nobody quoted in the story. So it was their next Kwame Kilpatrick thing. They could find something to put. And I said, this is absolutely ridiculous. So, I was comfortable with what I had done, what I had not done, and with who I am. So, I had a successful business before I joined the administration. I stepped back into a successful business. People who knew me, and those who didn't, either they took the time to get to know me or they kept stepping. So. Right. It was okay either way. It was interesting though, because one of the accusations was that during a trip to Washington, D.C., that I had the mayor cancel a meeting with a U.S. senator and had security take me to Burberry. And so that became, I mean, I was like, where is people getting this stuff? We went to Burberry. Yeah, I wanted to go and I went shopping, but I didn't cancel a meeting with the senator to do it.
Right.
It was just crazy, JC. So, you know, that's how it goes.
Yeah, no, it does. Well, you've always shown to be above those petty moments, and you do a great job at it. You know, so we've talked a lot about your career. We've talked a lot about the work that you've done, but share with our listeners. Part of this is to also get into beyond, you know, your normal day-to-day work. You know, can you share with some of our listeners, maybe some folks in Detroit know some of these things or don't, maybe definitely folks who aren't, maybe they don't either. Can you tell us some of your favorite things in life besides your family? Like, what do you enjoy?
You know what? I'm going to be perfectly just blatantly honest with you.
Yeah.
I have worked so much and so hard since I was 24, a whole few years ago.
Yeah.
But I've not left much room for too many other things. And I look back, and if I could do it differently, I would incorporate more of a balance. But I was always very shy, so socializing wasn't really my thing. So if it was work, then I was good. If I had to go to an event, if I had to speak, if I had to moderate a panel, I was good. Invite me to a barbecue at your house, probably not going to do it. Just the shyness, I never necessarily got over it in a personal capacity. So my thing was, you know, my kids, my family, and shopping. I was a habitual shopper, and now I sit here and look at all these clothes and things that I have after the pandemic, and all I wear is sweatpants. So, you know, but you know, that's about it. I enjoy traveling. I enjoy concerts. But if I could go back and do something different, I would invest more time into maintaining personal relationships and friendships outside of my immediate family. Yeah.
No, that's great advice. I think we all in this space, there's a drive that's in it, and we all kind of, I relate to that a little bit. I relate to that.
I mean, that's because at 24, you know, I was trying to figure things out. You know, while people my age were hanging out, I was busy taking, you know, business meetings and trying to learn, you know, how to navigate. I was also trying to overcome, you know, a cadre of haters who did not want to see me succeed, people that really put forth attempts to undermine me and my success. So that took a lot of energy, and I enjoyed it. You know, I enjoyed what I was doing. I enjoyed what I was building. And you know, that's where I invested my time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Karen, that was a really good segue into what I call the breaking news round. Breaking news. So this is like the level of, like, you know, so we've started to get a little more of the depth and things like that. And so I've done this a few different ways, and I'm now adapting my breaking news questions to follow the James Lipton Actors Studio interview that he would do famously at the end of every show. And so I got I think it's about 10 questions here. I'm just going to ask you first thing that comes to your mind, and we'll wrap up here. So, what is your favorite word, Karen Dumas?
I actually have two, and that's keep going. Those are two words that I always use. Keep going. Those are my favorite words. All right. I like that.
What's your least favorite word or two words?
Hate. That was a word my mother never allowed us to use because she said it dictated too much of a level of emotion. You should never hate anything or anybody.
Wise. Very wise. What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Music, and fairness. Those are the things that move me. They move me creatively. They move me emotionally, and spiritually. I like seeing and believing that the right thing should, and is done. And I love music. Music will put me into those pockets, into those compartments where I can be effective in all of those spaces.
What turns you off?
Gossip. I hate gossip. I don't want to hear anything about anybody. I don't like it. I never have. In grade school, I was always the subject of it. Karen Dumas did this. Karen, did you see? And I just will not entertain it. I don't care whether it's something local. I don't care if it's something national. I do not like gossip. So don't call me with any.
That's a good attitude to have for a woman in communications. Like, gossip doesn't rule. Yeah, that's how I like
just don't. Never have. But I don't.
What's your favorite curse word?
WTF. That is it. Seriously. Like, whether I say it to myself or out loud, that's it.
Okay. Notice the poise, folks. She didn't even say it here. So we're trying to get her to say it, but she didn't say it. Anyways,
I know you are.
I know. What sound or noise do you love?
I love the sound of water. I love the sound of rain, the ocean, a fountain. It's very calming. Rain, it's very calming. So that's a sound that I love.
What sound or noise do you dislike?
Windshield wipers. I do. I cannot stand windshield wipers. I know that's odd, but that's honest. You want me to be honest?
No, I want you to be honest. So, although when you're driving in the car and you're listening to the rain, and then you get the windshield wipers, like, do they cancel each other out, or like which one do you? A little bit,
but there's something about a windshield wiper that drives me crazy. So I will turn it off until I absolutely can't see anymore. So yeah, while I'm driving, I'm focusing on safety. But yeah, there's something about a windshield wiper. It's just, oh my goodness, like, whose idea was this? I don't like it.
What profession, other than your own, would you like to attempt?
I like the profession that I'm in. The one profession that I miss terribly is talk radio. Mm-hmm. But if I had some fantasy profession that I would try, I would love to know just one time, what is it like to be on stage, maybe to sing or perform before a packed house? What is that like? I remember being backstage at an LL Cool J concert many years ago here in Detroit, and somebody hit the curtain, and just the movement of the curtain sent the crowd into a frenzy. And I said, what is that like, where people just, like, that's got to be a crazy feeling. So that would be the thing. But I can't sing, so that's strictly a fantasy.
You hit that question. I was about to ask you, can you sing? And I just didn't know it. Wow. Okay.
No, I cannot.
What profession would you not like to do?
Well, I've always, to say something that I would not like to do would, in my opinion, be condescending to those who do it. And I've also learned that you never know what angle and what turns life will have. So my mother used to always say, don't ever say what you will and won't do, because you don't know where life will place you. So
it's good advice.
I won't even give it thought in that regard. I'm thankful to be able to do what I do, and hope that I can continue to either do this or elevate. And like I said, I'd love to return to talk radio. I miss that so much.
Karen, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
What are you doing here? Like, I wasn't ready for you. Why are you here?
Okay, no, that's good.
But no, I would like for him to say, "A life well lived."
Yeah,
you've done as I would like for you to do.
Yeah,
and I try to live every day just by being a good person. I don't check the boxes that people think you're supposed to check. I'm not going to do something that feels insincere. But I try to treat people with the same level of respect, courtesy, support, and compassion that I believe God wants us all to do. And I really try to live that every day.
Amen.
And no collection necessary, see?
Karen, this has been great. I got one final question. I want to know, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our Flack Talk listeners before we close out today's show?
Yeah, I just want to say this, James. I think that your listeners are in great hands with you. I don't think that very many people know the depth of who you are and what you've done and all that you've stood for. And I have a great level of admiration, appreciation, and respect for who you are personally and professionally. And so I am proud of you. I congratulate you, and I thank you for sharing your platform with me.
Well, Karen, thank you very much. Thanks for coming on Flack Talk, and thanks for that nice little plug. I really appreciate that.
It is honest.
If you liked Flack Talk and want to learn more about your favorite muckrakers and newsbreakers, please hit the subscribe button or visit flacktalk.com. New Flack Talk episodes with James Canning air every other Tuesday, wherever you get your podcasts.